Hi guys, so looking into this problem we've got with the Bondwell16 and the ROM issue, this is where the address lines are high on both the BIOS ROM and on the character ROM. Now all address lines, as I've stated, A0 up to A7 all read as errors when I put them in my programmer. And I've got one of these, which is a very, very common programmer. They're the tl866 plus. Now the problem is with these programmers is they'll do the 2716 and the 2764, but they won't do the 2732s. And a lot of that is with these programmers, which are getting a little bit on now, they don't go up to a high enough voltage to program. You can read with them and you can verify with them, but you cannot program with them. And so that set me thinking that there's got to be a way to do it. The company that originally made these, before there were so many clones made, knows about it. And I found a web page on the EEV blog electronics community forum. There's a chap on there and he had one of these and had the same issues. So he built himself his own breadboard homebrew version, had similar issues. The issue he had is the software, and he used the Linux clone of the software as well as the Windows software for the same manufacturer as these, and they both had the same issue. He was hoping the Linux version didn't. And what it is that one of the pins that it uses when it programs, it's meant to pull low, but it doesn't. It's high all the time. So he went through and he looked at the other issue with the voltage, and he's worked on a fix for this and the other tl866As and that, which have a similar issue. And by dropping in, he's put a set of header pins in it, and what you do is when you jumper these header pins, it increases the voltage, because there's a voltage divider network inside here that drops the voltages for the different chips. When you set it up in the software, you can set it to what voltage you want to program at. And like with mine, the maximum I can go to is 18 volts. And unfortunately, these 2732s need 25 volts. That's the problem. So he made a way of making another divider to add into it. And he put a jumper in the end down here on one of these sides. I can't remember exactly which one. And what he does is when he wants to do these chips, he pops the jumper in, and it enables him to get the 25 volts. It's about 24.75 or somewhere around there, which is good enough to program them. So he's done that. And to do the pull down on it that the software is not doing in here, he actually used like a little jumper wire that went from one pin to another, which actually pulled, I think it was to ground, from the pin to ground, that pulled it down. And it was fine to leave it down, because these chips need it down to program and they need it down to verify. So it was pulling it down when it was verifying, but it was not pulling it down when it was programming. And so this was the workaround for it. So it was down permanently. So I thought, rather than he was using a piece of wire to do it, I thought you could use just a socket. Get one of these sockets, and you could bridge the pins. You pop your IC in the socket, you pop the whole lot in your programmer, put your jumper on, and then do it, and that's done. And you just make sure that you know that is for the 2732s. And that will do all of them, the A, the B, the D and the E, I think it is, which definitely need 25 volts. The lower ones need 21 volts, but they will work fine. These are A's, and mine only goes to 18 volts, so it wouldn't allow me to program this. It checks it, it verifies it, and then when it goes through to do the programming, it can't write to it. And when it checks that first byte, it comes up as zeros, or double F in this case, instead of F3, which is what this ROM is, the first byte on this ROM is meant to be. So it picks up straight away, there's a problem, and it drops out. And that is because this is not pushing through enough voltage. So what I'm going to do is I decided what I'll do is I'll pop this open. Now these are cheap programmers. So I mean, you know, they're only like about $40, $30. So I'll pop this open, I'll go through his mod. Now I'm going to put a link to his page on the website in the description of this video, so you guys can go there and have a look at it. He does have the other information on how to, if you need different voltages that this doesn't do, how to go through and calculate the value for the resistors that you need. And I suppose if you need more than one, you could probably put in a little multi-switch in here to switch along to increase it, because what you do, and he tells you this on his webpage, is you set it, like I need 25 volts. So what I will do is I'd put another one in here that gives me an extra 7 volts. So the resistor network I put in here would give me another 7 volts. So I put the maximum that mine goes is 18 volts. And when I put that jumper on and then power it up, it allows me, even though I set it to 18 volts, it gives me 25. And then that's what I need to program with. And then this should program fine. If you've got ones that need different voltages and this won't do it, then he gives you the formula how to calculate the values that you need to make it for what you want. And as I said, you could have a little rotary switch or a little sliding switch, as long as there's room in here for it. And you could put something like that in, and you could make a selectable resistor divider network to give you the voltages you want. So he just had a little hole drilled in, and he super glued in a couple of header pins. Whether I do that, those boards I picked up with all those components on that I was going to desolder and that, I found out something interesting about those as well. They were obviously for some sort of a display in a museum or in a library or something, because they have timing circuits and they have record and playback on one of the circuits. And I noticed that the Eproms, or the erasable Eproms I had on them, all had bird noises on them. So each of these delay units had 1 minute and so many seconds. So I'm picking that the microphone, it has an option for record or play. And I'm wondering if they've used it to record the voices through the microphone, and then they turned around and switched it the opposite direction. So at the display, if someone pushes a button, it'll play the noise. So you can go to a display, and when you want to hear the sound of the bird, you push the button and it played the sound to you. And it played for 1 minute and 4 seconds, I think is what they're all set to. So I thought, that's some cool circuitry there. So I don't know if I really want to rip them all apart, but I could probably keep one and pull the others apart. And they had some really tiny wee little two-way 3-pin switches in them. I'll just grab one and show you. Right, so here we go. Now that's the little timing unit, and I don't know if you can read that on there, but that has got 1 minute and 4 seconds written on it. And that has voltage in and a trigger, and that's obviously voltage out, which would then go from that into this. And then this would be into here, and there would be on this one of these sides, there's the speaker out. And so what would happen is that they've soldered wires under here, which obviously went, these are the push buttons on the board, but it went to the ones for the display. And so what you'd do is you'd do play, and then I can't really see what the other one says. I put my eyes on. So on here, you got the yellow one is start and the red one is pause. Now they're different colour switches on the other ones, but there's this little slider switch here, which one way is play. You switch it the other way is record. So that's a little microphone. So that's what they got, and it's got another switch here. One is for normal, which is probably play once, and the other one is to loop, so it goes over and over and over and over and doesn't stop. Now this one has got one of our birds in New Zealand here, which is a night owl called a moorpork, and that's got the sound of that. Now I think it might be quite cool actually. I might hook these up, because I think it just takes a 12 volt power supply. Oh, 6 volts, sorry. So it has ground and 6 volts. So it needs a 6 volt power supply and a speaker. I think we might have a play with these just to see what they sound like. I think it'd be pretty cool. I've got some old speaker from a PC here, so we could hook that into it. And I think that would actually be quite cool. And I might do that before I damage them too much. But yeah, I sort of thought that was cool. You know, the little timer units they'd made up in that, and you can adjust it, because this is one of the development boards they made, and it's actually telling you what the components are, and that this is the maximum for the timing, and so you could actually readjust these times if you wanted to, which is pretty cool. So anyway guys, That's what they are, and I think what we can do is we can open this up. I could look at doing something like that. I could probably just pop a little hole for now, put it in, and probably put a little push to make release, a latch switch or something, or just put something on the outside of it here, just double side tape it or something on the side here for now. And then later on, if I'm going to use one of these little micro switches, I can actually put one in here. I do have some little miniature rocker ones as well, brand new ones, but I think they're a lot bigger than that. They're a lot bigger than these, and I think these are actually quite a neat little switch. So none on that one though. So anyway guys, I think yes, we will open this up, and I think we will go through doing the mod on this, and then what I'll do is I'll use this one of these sockets, which is one on top here, pop it off, and what we'll do is we'll bridge the wires that he says need to be bridged underneath it, and then once we've done that, we can pop the chip in, bump it back in there, close it, because it's not just the BIOS I've got to do, I've got to make another character ROM too, because both of them are coming up with errors. So we'll do that, and see if it works. We'll put it on the machine, you'll see the screen, and we'll see if it programs them. And if it does, guys, you can do it yourself, because most people have got one of these, and they're a cheap little programmer. So the tl866 Plus, or any of the tl866 series. As I said, on his page, he does have some information about some of the models are slightly different in their voltages, and you need to use a different resistor, which he goes through that as well. Right, guys, I'll grab out the resistor I need to do this, and I'll be back. Alright guys, so back now, and sorry if I seem a little bit distracted at times, because I'll have to check the documentation as I'm doing it. I haven't printed it off yet, so I need to check that to make sure I'm doing it right. Bear with me if I look like I'm a little bit distracted instead of talking to you, okay? What we'll do is we'll undo the base. And the other thing I'll do is I'll try and keep this all in shot for you too, so I'm not all over the place. Right, so we'll leave the screws in there, and then gently lift this out. Now I've left the lever down because it's easier than having it sticking up, rocking around everywhere. Go over there. Right, and so that's inside your machine. A few circuit boards and things. Now I think this will unplug and come off if you want it to. It looks like there are header pins in it, but I do see that they've soldered some earthing points, and they're actually soldered in, so to stop you pulling it apart. If you wanted to, you could probably desolder the two earthing points, and then the whole thing will pop apart. But right, so now we've got that out. The other thing we need, because this is a 2 plus, I use a 6.2k resistor, but I don't have any on hand. I probably do have some in the back room I would need to hunt out, but I do have a 6.8, which is what he used, and that what gives you the 24.75 volts rather than the 25. If you put in the 6.8k one, you'll get 25 volts. So this just allows, it's a fraction under, and it works. So that's the resistor we need. Some wire. Put this back in shot for you. Some wire, which we're going to, not as much as this, but I just wanted some of this. The other stuff you can use is, if you want insulated fine wire, you can use transformer wire. So if you have any old appliances that you're getting rid of and that have transformers into them, a good thing is to grab some of those, break the transformers open, keep the wire out of them, because it's got an enamel. Just check that it has, not all of them do, but most of them do. That's got an enamel on it, and what you can do is use your soldering iron to heat that up to melt the enamel off, tin the ends, and it's an insulated wire. But this stuff's pretty heat resistant anyway, it's not too bad. And this is a solid stranded copper, so I'll use that. I've got plenty of this stuff floating around. The other thing we need are 2 jumpers. So I've got some straight, and I've got a right angle one here, a header pin. Now that goes over the 2 jumpers out the front, so we can short it together to give us our 25 volts, and of course a socket, And we'll need a piece of this wire to bridge the pins we need to bridge as well. So from here I will just have a look, and now we've got to go from a point on here where the resistor divider is, and I'll just have a look to see where that was, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so what he did is he soldered a wire to pin 5 of U3, which is on the bottom here, which is over here, which is this IC here. So we need to look for pin 5. Well, pin 1's got the dot in it, so you go 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 is this back pin here. Now you don't have to solder it here. You could find a better spot if you're a bit worried about shorting a pin or something. Follow it to where it goes, and if it goes to a resistor or a capacitor or something, attach it there if you're a wee bit worried about causing a short. The other end of it, from this header jumper that we've got a short, goes to ground. So anywhere there is a decent ground, we can put that in. And that is basically it. That's basically all you need to do this mod. I don't know if I've got any heat shrink small enough to put over this, but I'm thinking if I cut that wire short enough, I should be able to attach it to a spot there or a component so it's out of the way. And then if I bend that leg up and then solder the wire to that and then trim the rest of it off, I can put something under it to insulate it so that it's not actually physically going to touch anything. And if I do that, then I should be fine. I could also place it somewhere out of the way and put some double-sided tape or something on here, run it over and solder it on, put it under it so it's not going to short on anything, and do the same at the other end. Because once this is all buttoned up, you're not going to open it again. I think we'll do that. I'll put my better glasses on for doing this sort of work, and then I think we'll get into it. Now what he did, he actually had two wires, and he went one from here and one from the anode on D14, and he ran those up and put the resistor up in here. I think it's actually quite a lot tidier if I just put something underneath it. I don't think there's anything there it's going to short on anyway. I mean, if we just put a little bit of hot glue or something on that, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Move that over, I think. No, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. So if I dropped a little bit of hot glue on that, I think that would be fine. And then what I can do is put something under here, and then what we do is run these two wires, one from here, and then we can come up. Now these holes aren't used, so we could probably run the wires through one of these. Oh no, hang on, we can't do that. Up here for thinking. Yes, I know we'll have to run our wires on the side of it there. Now there's a little bit of mask there that's away from the edge of the board. That's not going to matter. I mean, if we need to, we can always file that back a little bit to give us a wee bit more room. But I think we should be alright. I don't think it's going to be much of a hassle to get this in here. But yes, I think, yep, we'll do that, and I will do the white will go to the anode, which is our earth, and the red or the orange can go to the resistor, and then we can take that up. And I'm pretty sure this wire is thinner than what he's using too. So I mean, yeah, it'll work fine. Solder that onto there, and even if we just slide something underneath there, I think would be fine. So I can do that before I solder it. I'll just slide a piece of double-sided tape onto it. Now the other thing you could put on there is if you've got some Captain tape. I don't have any of that, so I'm just going to get a little bit of this. And this is just a thin double-sided tape. And it's got the waxy covering on one side. I'm going to just leave that on there, because that'll actually help as a insulator as well. So there, and that can go there and there. And then we just solder that one on. And that's got us insulated away from anything underneath. And it won't short. Cool. And that one's on there. Now I probably could have made that a little bit shorter. But I think if we do that, drop a little bit of hot glue onto these to hold them in place, and then I think that'll be fine. And then we just run this up, and he made a hole in his, and I'm just wondering, I don't use this header. I don't use this header at all. So I'm just wondering, I'll just run these wires up and around, and I can put the header connector on the outside here with a bit of double-sided tape, and then I can just double tape it on, I think. Yeah, I think that would work. So I'll heat up the hot glue gun. And always a handy thing to have around, guys, is the old hot glue gun. You can buy them from the $2 shop or the craft shops and that. Always have a pack of these floating around. I get the long ones. You can get the short ones, but then I find by the time you get them in and you feed it in, you're running out of room to push it through. And if you're sticking down a lot of stuff, you're mucking around with them all the time. Whereas with the long ones, okay, they might hang out the end, but you don't have to worry about putting them in as often. So we just got to wait for that to heat up for a little bit. It shouldn't take long. Yeah, that was from some time ago. I don't know how that happened. It was a bit of molten solder that splashed onto my reel here and fused it together. It's come off now finally after all these years. So I'll need that in a minute when I put the other one on. Yeah, we're just starting to heat up now. So what I will do is I will put a blob on here. Blob down there. Blob on here. Right, and that should hold those there, and they shouldn't move. Yep, I think those are going to be good. A little bit more on that, where the wires are going to come out and through, so if there's any strain on it, it's not going to pull the wire off. Sorry, I'm just trying to get some glue off my finger. I'll unplug that and we can move that out the way. Yep, so that's not going to go anywhere. And as I said, I'm probably going to mod this later on. So what I was thinking is, with this, as I said, I don't use this connector in the end here. And this is the one for putting in the special connector for doing in-circuit programming and that. And I don't know of many people who do. So what I'm thinking is that I'll pop it out through here, and I'll just double side tape it to the side of here, and I can just push the jumper on and off as I need it. So I think that would be a good idea. Because then if we do that, I'm not making holes in the case for no reason. Yep, see, and that will close up quite nicely, and the wire can come out over to the side here. I can solder a jumper onto it, double side, or hot glue it to the side of the case, and then all I gotta do is I just pop the jumper on or off as I need it. So I think that's what we will do. So I will now turn this over, and as I was saying, guys, it's not hard to do. You just got to be patient, take your time, and don't rush things. A lot of the problems happen when you rush. When you start getting impatient and want to hurry things along and get them done faster, that is when you have the issue. And that's when things go wrong and problems happen. So I think that's cool. I'll do that to there. Now, I've dropped that other one, but I'd rather put a straight pair of headers on there rather than a angled one, because it's on the outside of the case. So then I can cut that down. It's going to go to there. So come back a fraction. Go to there. As I say, handy wire. You can get this from some old network cables and telephone systems. Some of the old house wiring in New Zealand here has this type of wire. So you can get it from there, and some of the old network systems have the same wire. And so you can get the cables from some of the old routers, the rack mounted ones, or even cables, even the Cat5 cables that they had. Have a look for some of those and see if they're the solid core and not the multi-cord ones, and strip some of those out and get the wires, because there's 8 wires in them, so there's 4 pair. And that will be some wires you can use for those. And as I say, it's a solid core, so it's a good amount of power can go through them before they get too hot. And that's the other thing I must do, is must make myself a vent for getting rid of the fumes from the soldering iron. I don't have one, but I need to make one. And that could be something we can do. The other thing I do have now is I was looking at our local buy sell swap group. Well, no, it wasn't actually. It was where was it? I was on Facebook, because I have a 3D printer. I actually belong to a few 3D printer groups locally. And I was looking around, and one of the pages popped up that I belong to, and there was a guy locally, and he's only about 20 minutes away from me. And he turned around, and he had a 3D printer, and he says, it's playing up, the bed heats up, but it only goes to about 30 degrees and then shoots to 300. And I thought, oh yeah. And then he turned around and he says, so he just wants to give it away for free. And I thought, oh, that's got to be a bargain. So I messaged him, and he took a few secs to get back to me, and he says, yeah, there's been a lot of interest in it. And I said to him, well, if you've still got it, I'll be there in about 18 minutes. And he says, yeah, I've got a couple of things to do, but it'll be on the doorstep, so whoever gets here first can have it. So, well, I jumped in the car and I shot off. I went over to where he was, and I thought, where the hell's this street? And I couldn't find it. GPS turned around and said to me, yes, you're at the location. And I sort of thought, where's the street? And so I went, and it says, you've gone past it. So I turned around and went back, and it's on like a little side alley. It doesn't even look like a street. And so anyway, I shot down there, and there was this roller door up at the end of the street, and there's this guy in there, and I went and said, he said, yeah, here it is on the step here. And I said, oh, cool. And he says, you know what's wrong with it? And I says, yeah, I saw what you wrote, and yep, I can understand that. And he says, well, if you want it, it's yours, you can have it. And I said, yeah, pretty sure I can do something with that. And he says, yeah, take it. So I had a bit of a yarn with him for a few minutes, and then I took it and threw it in the car, and then he had to go. And I said, okay, not a problem, I'll catch you later, thanks very much. just like got in the car and shut the door, getting ready to pull out, some guy come racing up behind me and jumped out of his car, ran past and looked in the back seat, and then, and turned around and walked, trudged back to his car. Just missed out on it. I don't know where he come from, but he wasn't very happy. But what the printer was, it was a Adventure 3 Pro. Now, they're not a big printer. They're only 150 by 150. But this thing's in its own enclosure, so it can do ABS and SAS. It's a nice little printer. So anyway, I brought it home and I left it for a day or two, and then I thought, I'll have a look at this thing. So I plugged it all in and I read a bit about it online. Turned it on and thought, I'll do a preheat and see what happens. Hit the preheat and it went up to 190 degrees on the nozzle, and it went up to 60 degrees on the bed. And stayed there. And I thought, oh dear. So I haven't tried printing with it yet, but I'm sort of thinking it's a nice little unit to do small things with, and things around the size of this sort of case or a fraction bigger, because it's only 150mm by 150mm and 150mm tall. So it's not made for big things, but it's made for a lot of nice little smaller stuff. The only disadvantage with it is that it takes 3/4 size rolls. It won't take the 1 kg rolls, but you can make an adapter to have them externally or hanging off the side, and so I will play around with something like that. But I want to have a play with it and see what I can do. And the nice thing is that it does do the ABS, and it has the filter system in it, and ABS is better for impact resistance and heat and things like that, and the SAS that it can do is food grade safe. So I mean, that's another cool thing. But anyway, we will solder this. We will glue this on. If we get it hot enough, we got to remember to turn it on first. But yeah, so I'm sort of thinking, well, that'll be a nice little printer for small parts. So if I wanted to do pieces for keyboards or hinges or fronts for cases for drive bays or levers for the drives and things like that, it's a nice little printer for doing that with. And in that it's enclosed, it keeps its temperature. Now, it's not the fastest printer, and it's not probably the quickest printer. There are printers that are faster and quicker than it, but for free, I'll take it. So now I have a good range. I've got, that's 150mm. I've got my Ender 3, which is a 220 or 240 by 220 by 220. And then I've got the big one, which I must, when I can get a chance, get into it and repair the sleeves in it for the rails, is my ANET A8 Plus, which is a full steel framed one. And that's the big one. That does 300 by 300 by 300. So, yeah, so I've got a full range, which is pretty good. So if I need to print multiple parts, I can do it. Alright, so we've got a bit of hot glue coming out now. I don't want to make it so that it stops me opening the case. So I'll put it up this side. I don't suppose if it goes over that gap much anyway, I can always dig it off if I need to. I'll push that back from there. It's actually going up there a little. I don't want that. Right, and so he had it so it was out here, and he used to just pop his jumper on it. But that's what I thought. If I do that, that now tells this to program at 25 volts. That's all there was to it to do that. The only thing we've got to do is to adapt one of these so that when we put it in, it holds that chip enable line low. So that's the only other thing. So we don't need the hot glue gun for that. So we can turn this back off and get rid of it for the second time. I should have thought about that when I did it the first time. Never mind. I'll chuck that in there. So that one's a bit bent. Might be alright. I should get a good quality tuned pin, because I'll pop into that and it'll be more stable on these. I'll just go and grab one. Right, so back, got one. Because these are tuned, they're harder, they're a lot more firmer, so they're not going to, those press fit ones, they are very, very soft and it's easy to bend them. And these will pop into the sockets fine. No, yeah, they go in fine. Right, so those should go in there fine. So, right, we'll find out what we've got to change now. Okay, so what they do is they go from pin 18 to ground. So we need my piece of wire back again. I'm going between pin 18 and ground. So we start from pin 1, and it's 24 pins, so that's 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So we go from there to ground. Sorry guys, I just have to have a look. Right, so 12 is ground. So we need to jump a wire between 12 and 18. We're going from there, which will be 12 is the back one. So we'd solder from here. And the other nice thing is with these, as you can see, they've got quite a large shoulder, and then they taper to the pin. So it's quite easy to solder a wire onto here and then run it over this other side and solder it there across the base. And it's not going to interfere with it going into the connector here too. Whereas with the push spring leaf ones, the way they work, it's just a flat piece of metal that it's used, brass that's been tinned. And there's nowhere really to do that on it. These have actually got a little bit of something in the way, which makes them quite a lot better. So I think we'll do that. So I will just... If you had wire wrap, you could wire wrap it. That would be another way of doing it. So there's lots of ways of doing it, guys, so it just depends on what you want to do. Wire wrap's not a thing as it used to be, it's more of an old school thing. But it comes in really handy for this sort of stuff. So it's the sort of thing that if you get your hands, if you had a junk sale, or if you go to some of these ham radio swap meets and things like that, you can find stuff like that. As I say, it's pretty cool gear to pick up if you're going to need something like that in the future. And if it's cheap, why not? You never know when you're going to need one. And see, that's what I was saying, it makes a nice little tidy job going underneath there. Wire wrap probably would have done a nicer job, but hey, I don't have any. That's got that connected, so what I will do is I'll just do a continuity test on that. And we'll just make sure that that is connected. Might be easier. Yep, and that's fine. Right, so that'll work fine for us. Because the way that a lot of people used to do these before found out about this mod is they used to they used to bend out those two pins, and what they would do is they'd put a separate 25 volt power supply onto the pin that needs it, and they would ground the other pin as well. So they used to do it that way, and it was, you know, it's like a lot of mucking around. This is just so much easier. And the mod is there all the time. And I mean, when you need it, you use it. When you don't need it, you take it off. So it's pretty good. Got to make sure I get these pins in the right place. The only thing with the tuned pins is they're not as forgiving as the spring clips, because they're a round hole, where the spring clips are just a wide flat space for them to go into. And whereas these aren't, these are like a little hole, and you're just going to make sure that the pins all line up with the holes. And if they don't, you have to massage them in. But once you get them in, they're done. I need to find my tool. I have my small one for doing little ICs, and I've got a black one which is for doing these bigger ICs, and I have to find it. And I've said this to you on previous videos. These are on Thingiverse. These are called IC pin straighteners. 2 different sizes. And the other thing I recommend you get is this. And this is a tool for bending components. So if you need them a certain width apart and bending the leads straight, you can use these, and you just drop them down in between these gaps, and you bend the legs over to what size you want. Handy tools. And 3D print them. If you haven't got a 3D printer, your mate, if he's got one, get him to print them for you. If not, and you're local in New Zealand, and you would like a set, let me know. I do have some still floating around. I did some up a few years ago for our computer group at one of our meetups we had, and I've still got some left over. The problem is freighting them overseas is just so expensive, unless you want to pay the freight for them. But the cost of getting somebody to print them up for you is probably a lot cheaper. But if you want them, if you're in New Zealand, you want them, and you want to pay the freight on getting them, it'd be a few bucks to get them to you. Let me know, because I've got probably about half a dozen sets. So anyway, that's all done now, ready to go, ready to rock. That's our chip. Now what I'll do is I've got a few of these chips in. I got 10 of them in. I will pop one into here. I'll take this jumper off, and I'll show you on the screen what it does. And then what we will do is then we'll pop this on, we'll pop this one in, and we'll see it, and we'll see how it programs, and we'll see how we go from there. Alrighty, so I'll do that. Back in a sec. Hey guys, so we've got the upgrade to the programmer done. What I've done is I will show you I've done the Eprom socket as well, and as you can see on here, I have gone from ground to pin 18, which from ground to pin 18, which pulls the chip enable low, which it needs to program these chips. And you can leave it on for verify too, because it needs to be low for verify. Just remember that when you go to verify, you can pop that jumper off it to take the 25 volts off, because it only needs it for programming. So what I'm going to do is I have some other ROMs here, so I'm just going to pop one of those into the programmer and then show you with the software what happens when you don't have the 25 volts. And so then when you can see that it won't program without the 25 volts, I'll put the jumper on and put the chip in the socket onto the programmer, and then we'll give it another go, and you can see the difference it makes. Once I've done that, I will do another one, which will be the character ROM for that Bondwell16. So both of those chips will give me errors. I can also then do a verify to make sure that the pins aren't giving me errors, and it's not something in the software on the chip that's giving me a problem. I don't think so. I think there's an issue with those ROMs, so hopefully this will fix it. I will switch this over to the desktop. I'll bring up the programming software, and I'll talk you through what we're doing to get the chips program. Okay guys, so I'm just going to plug the programmer in, and yeah, it's loaded up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in one of these blank EPROMs, and you can see what happens when I tell it to try and program. Right, so I have got the first one in, and what I will do is then, this is set up for it. Now this is the BIOS ROM. So now it's set to 18 volts, which is the maximum I can go on this, and this is why it won't program it. So I've got verify on, and as you will see, as it programs each of these addresses, it verifies them as it goes along. And what you will see is, because this is not doing the right voltage, it's going to program this and then verify it. But what it's going to see is FF, because that's what the ROMs are, blank, and it's not going to see the F3, and it's going to kick back an error. So I'll do that, and you guys can see what I'm talking about. So it comes up, that's what we want, and we go program. Straight away it comes up with this error, and as it says there, the pin designation passed, programming the flash, error, address 00000, buffer data, which is meant to be F3, has verified as FF. Now that's what the chips are when they're blank. So this is what I'm saying. It's not got enough voltage to turn around and actually program the chips. So that's why we had to do this mod. And it's only some weird thing to do with the 2732s. They were the only weird one. The others do it at 21 volts. And so at 21 volts, this will just sneak in and work. If you get the newer version of this, which is the T46 or the T42, I think it's called, that has a higher threshold in the voltage, and it'll do the 2732 ROMs. If you want to get one of the newer ones, that'll save you doing this mod, but these are cheap, these little ones. So right, now I've got the jumper on, and I have got the, but what I've done is that jumper adds another 7 volts to that, so that takes us to our 25, and this should program. Now I've got the little socket I made up as well, and that is on the programmer, and then the blank ROM chip is inside of that. So now let's try and program this, and let's see what we get. So we go here, you know, there, we go program. And there we go, guys. Pin detect passed, program flash succeeded, verify flash succeeded, programming succeeded. And that's what it was. The voltages and pulling that line low was the issue. So that works fine. Now what I will do is I will switch back, and I will do the other ROM, the character set ROM, because that didn't have that one had an issue on the address lines as well. But what I will do is I'll pop this out, and I will take the jumpers off, and I'll pop this chip into the programmer by itself, and let's see if this reads without any errors on the address lines. Okay, that is in there, and so I'll do file, and I want to clear this, clear all the buffers. So that's what they look like. So this is what the ROM chips should look like, blank, and this is what it was seeing. It was trying to program F3, and it was just leaving the FF there because it couldn't program it because the voltages weren't high enough. So now what I will do is I'll tell it to go read the chip that's in the programmer. We go read now, and it reads fine. There's nothing wrong with any of the pins, and it's successfully read, and it's successfully terminated. So that chip is good. So now what I'll do is I'll put a little sticky over the window and mark that as a Bondwell16 BIOS ROM, and I'll do the other one. So there we have it, guys. So that's all done, and as I was saying, that is the adapter for it. What you do, pin 12 is ground, and on these, because I have the little bridge in the center of this, pin 18 is on, that's just on the back side of that brace. So yeah, from 12 you can count up to 18, and the tune pin sockets are nice, but as I was saying, because I've got the little bit of a shoulder on them, tag a wire there, run it across the other side, tag a wire there, then when they go in the programmer, those help hold it up so the wire doesn't get in the way. But what I do is I pop the chips into here first, pop that in the programmer, set my jumper, program it. But you don't need, or you shouldn't need this for the 16s or the 64s and above. It's only for the 32s, because they were, for some reason, they were the weird child that had the 25 volt side for programming. Don't ask me why. They went back to the normal one with 64, so maybe they tried it and then found out it was more hassle than what it was worth. Went back. Don't know. Alright guys, so I will do this other one and that, and we'll see where we go from here. This might be enough for this one. I just sort of think this was really, really interesting for you guys to see that some of this new gear can be upgraded, or newish gear. can be upgraded to work with some of the old stuff. Alright guys, as I always say, have a great day, have a great week, until next time, ciao.